Welcome to the Wolf Conservation Center in Salem, New York. There are places the maps don't properly describe. Places that feel older, where the air is thick with stories and the ground itself seems enchanted. In our collective imagination, these are the realms of witches, wizards, and mythical beasts. We've been taught to fear what lurks in these woods. For centuries, the wolf has been our ultimate scapegoat, the big bad villain of fairy tale and blockbuster. But this narrative isn't just fiction. It's a dangerous media narrative that has bled into our policy, our ecology, and pushed a keystone species to the brink. The real magic isn't in the monsters we've invented, but in the fight to save the creatures that we've misunderstood. I arrived at the Wolf Conservation Center on a day where the world was painted in fire and gold. But this isn't a theme park. This is a sanctuary, a forest, and one of the most critical front lines in a hidden war for genetic survival. The magic here isn't for show. It's in the science, the dedication, and the fragile lives hanging in the balance. That's where one small institution, hidden in the forest of Salem, New York, steps in.
Didn't even see you there. It's me, Talia, and I'm out here frolicking in the woods on yet another side mission, another side quest. This time, one that's more important. So this side quest involves wolves. And when you hear the word wolves, you probably think about Twilight or Red Riding Hood, all the sort of stereotypes in fictional books that have always portrayed a negative look at wolves. But here at the Wolf Conservation Center, their whole thesis and identity is based around trying to undo that negative stereotype around wolves. And the reason being is because wolves are some of the most extinct creatures today. The red wolf right now is number one amongst the wolves, when it comes to extinction. And there's also different wolves from Mexico and other areas that are facing extinction as well. Now, what this conservation center is doing to stop that is they have rescued those very wolves that are on the top list of endangered species. They've taken them back to health, and they've gone by a search and rescue, a rehabilitate and rescue approach. So what they do is they rehabilitate after they rescue, and then they release them into the public or into their natural habitat so that they can live happy, full lives. So in today's video, you're going to be learning a lot. You're going to get to see the wolves, hear them howling. You're going to get to talk to directors and hear about what it's like working here, but more importantly, hear the stories of the wolves. So if you are an animal lover like me, this is for you. Lock in. Let's go.
I met with Reagan Downey and Rebecca Bowes. Reagan, who serves as Director of Education and Advocacy, and Rebecca, who serves as Curator of the Wolf Conservation Center.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing us here on this really beautiful property. It's been really incredible and inspiring to see how the wolves have found peace here, and feeling the energy of the place as well. It feels really magnetic, and I can see the transformations already, some of the wolves who are endangered species. So I want to say thank you for opening your doors to us. It's my first time being around wolves, and I'm pretty sure a lot of viewers' first time getting to interact and see wolves in a somewhat up-close way. So with that being said, I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about how this facility got started and the early origins of it.
We're in Westchester County, and our founder was and is a classical pianist, and she was very inspired by wolves, felt very connected to them, and really wanted to make the world better for them. And so she was hoping to do that by teaching people about wolves. And so she was hoping to cut down at those myths and misunderstandings. So when she started this organization in the mid-90s, she was doing education programs. So people would come in and they would have a quick presentation in her house at the time. And then
so it's more very
exactly
intimate.
very intimate. And then she would actually bring people up to see wolves. And so we had our original group of ambassador wolves at that time. We had 3 wolves named Kyla, Lucas, and Apache.
Are they still here?
And they're not still here, but they did live in one of our enclosures that we still have today.
Okay, so they're like the founding
Exactly.
wolves.
So they're kind of the founding wolves of our ambassador program. And the reason we had ambassadors was because wolves are very endangered, and they're so rare, and they're very elusive. So even if you were to go out looking for wolves in the wild, you most likely wouldn't see any. They would stay very far away.
They're experts at,
Yes,
you know,
they're
being
experts
incognito.
at exactly
Yeah.
staying away from people, keeping themselves safe.
Right.
And so a lot of people only are ever exposed to wolves when they watch a movie or they read a book. And usually books and movies don't portray wolves in the best light.
Definitely fantasy Twilight.
Exactly,
I would say
exactly.
that's what most
Werewolves,
werewolves.
wolves being dangerous, they're the villains in a lot of Disney movies. And so unless people are actively learning about wolves, they just grow up thinking wolves are scary. And that can then lead to really damaging practices down the line, because they might grow up thinking it's okay to kill wolves, or it's okay to just not care at all. And really, we need to be very active in our support for wolves and in our like using our voices to speak up as well. And so that was really the goal of our education programs at the time, was to connect people to wolves so they would leave the center and they would feel positive or feel neutral, but they at least wouldn't feel negatively towards wolves.
What would you say are some of the decisions that go into creating a safe space here? Like on a daily, what are the hard decisions that you have to make in order to, you know, create a space like this?
Sure. So the health and well-being of the wolves is our foremost priority. Both wolves on site, wolves in the wild. But when it comes to wolves on site, we think a lot about what their wild environments would look like. So they would have food, water, some type of shelter, and so all of our enclosures here mimic that as well. They all have water sources, they all have shelters, but we also want to make sure that we have adequate coverage for the wolves. They have places where they can hide, different vantage points. And then we also do a lot of enrichment as well. So I know you'll have that later on. To keep their brains active.
Okay, I was just about to ask about that. So you said you have different vantage points and places they can hide. So do you kind of structure this based off what they would experience in the wild so that they can get used to interacting?
So a wolf territory in the wild can vary in size. Territories are dependent upon food availability and then also density of other wolves in the area.
Okay.
So it's like if you're living in a city, for example, you are not going to have a huge house because you got a lot of people sharing that space.
I know that well.
You're going to have a small,
right
there you go. So you're not going to have a huge area. But also because you're in a city, everything you need is close by. So you can walk down the street and you can get food, you can get water. But if you're living in a more rural environment where there's not a lot of people, towns are going to be spread out. You might have to travel a very far distance to get food. And the same thing goes for wolves. So if they're living in an area where there are a lot of other wolves, but there's a lot of great food opportunities, their territory is going to be pretty small. A territory can be as small as 30 square miles. So they are going to be able to find everything they need within that one space. But if you're a wolf that's living up in the Arctic, you might have a territory that gets closer to 1,000 square miles in size because you're following migratory animals. You're looking actively for food and following prey around. And so your territory needs to be large enough to allow for that. Because wolves are territorial, so they don't typically overlap with other wolf packs. And so they want to make sure everything in their space is in their space and they don't have to stray into someone else's area for too long.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because I think I see that a lot. I know wolves and dogs are greatly different, but you see it with, with dogs as well.
Yeah,
so.
a lot of similarities.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned, which I think is so important. This sort of stereotype of wolves and the way that pop culture and media kind of creates them as a villain or some sort of evil entity. I think a lot of times you see that across the board with different species. So you see that a lot with pit bulls, right? Where pit bulls are not adopted because
they're dangerous breed.
Dangerous breed, and there's a whole list of dangerous breeds. So a lot of speciesism is at play. And I was just curious your thoughts about that and the best ways to reverse that.
Yeah, I think when we approach species by labeling them as dangerous, it kind of implies that we somehow have this right to decide who is dangerous and who isn't. And an animal is an animal. They don't wake up thinking if they're going to be a good or a bad animal today. They're behaving as a wild animal would, or as a domestic animal would. They're just behaving as they should as a species. And so by automatically categorizing, we're then imposing bias because we're implying that people should be scared or they should view these animals negatively. But we should really just be respecting animals for being animals. Wolves are predators. They eat meat. They kill other animals.
And we're predators.
And people are predators too. And so I think we can't impose our values on how another animal acts. There are things wolves do that we might not agree with, or that we might think we could never do ourselves, but that's because we're not wolves. And so we can't be judging what it is they're doing. They're wild animals.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a string of what I feel is feeling entitled and
feeling above. Yeah, exactly.
There's a very long history of the demonization of animals like the wolf, and it's a classic sociological phenomenon rooted not in biology, but in human history, economics, and religious control. The transformation of the wolf into the big bad wolf and a symbol of evil is directly tied to the European shift from hunter-gatherer societies to more agrarian, livestock-dependent cultures. And the wolf, as the apex competitor for resources, such as sheep and cattle, had to be vilified to justify its extermination. And this vilification was actually codified by the medieval Catholic Church, which often associated wolves with the devil, paganism, and heresy. They were seen as the embodiment of uncontrolled nature and wicked appetite. And their destruction was framed as virtuous religious duty. This narrative was later cemented in folklore like Little Red Riding Hood, which served as a cautionary tale for keeping children and their morality within the tight confines of the village, away from the chaos and wild appetite symbolized by the wolf and the woods. This concept of scapegoating and demonization is still very much visible today and how society treats misunderstood dog breeds like pit bulls. Pit bulls often have a public image as vicious, and it's nearly identical to the wolf's ancient reputation. Yet their real-world temperament is overwhelmingly determined not by genetics, but by human training, environment, mistreatment, and abuse. A clear parallel showing that vilification is always a reflection of human fear and not animal reality.
What would you say are some of the decisions that go into creating a safe space here? Like on a daily, what are the hard decisions that you have to make in order to, create a space like this?
Sure. So the health and well-being of the wolves is our foremost priority. Both wolves on site, wolves in the wild. But when it comes to wolves on site, we think a lot about what their wild environments would look like. So they would have food, water, some type of shelter, and so all of our enclosures here mimic that as well. They all have water sources, they all have shelters, but we also want to make sure that we have adequate coverage for the wolves. They have places where they can hide, different vantage points, and then we also do a lot of enrichment as well. So I know you'll have that later on.
Yeah,
to keep their brains active.
Okay, I was just about to ask about that. So you said you have different vantage points and places they can hide. So do you kind of structure this based off what they would experience in the wild so that they can get used to interacting?
So a wolf territory in the wild can vary in size. Territories are dependent upon food availability and then also density of other wolves in the area.
Okay.
So it's like if you're living in a city, for example, you are not going to have a huge house because you got a lot of people sharing that space.
I know that well.
You're going to have a small...
Right now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So you're not going to have a huge area. But also because you're in a city, everything you need is close by. So you can walk down the street and you can get food, you can get water. But if you're living in a more rural environment where there's not a lot of people, towns are going to be spread out. You might have to travel a very far distance to get food. And the same thing goes for wolves. So if they're living in an area where there are a lot of other wolves, but there's a lot of great food opportunities, their territory is going to be pretty small. A territory can be as small as 30 square miles. So they are going to be able to find everything they need within that one space. But if you're a wolf that's living up in the Arctic, you might have a territory that gets closer to 1,000 square miles in size because you're following migratory animals. You're looking actively for food and following prey around. And so your territory needs to be large enough to allow for that. Because wolves are territorial, so they don't typically overlap with other wolf packs. And so they want to make sure everything in their space is in their space and they don't have to stray into someone else's area for too long.
Okay, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because I think I see that a lot even with, I know wolves and dogs are greatly different, but you see it with, with dogs as well.
Yeah,
so.
A lot of similarities.
Yeah. I guess if somebody were to come here and spend the night, I know that you guys offer, everybody should go and do a night with the wolves here. But I know that's something that you offer.
Yes.
What would be something that would shock the guests? Like something that they never thought they would learn about wolves after spending some time?
Yeah, I think one of the best takeaways from our programs is that wolves are really afraid of people. Our Sleeping with Wolves program allows people to be here for a much longer period of time and also allows them to be here during 2 of the peak activity levels for wolves. So wolves are crepuscular, so they're most active at dawn and dusk, and our overnights allow for people to be on site during that time. But even still, the red wolves and the Mexican gray wolves, they're rarely visible. And so it helps remind people that wolves aren't dangerous. They're more afraid of us than we are of them. And so even after being here for hours and hours and hours, people might leave having only seen our ambassador wolves. And they might not see those red wolves and Mexican gray wolves because those wolves might choose to not come out. So it's a really great reminder that wolves are much more elusive and wary of people than we would typically think of.
And I think that's great because most times, if you really think about it, animals that are considered predatory or dangerous, they're often more afraid of us than
exactly.
we are of them. And, to see that up close, I think because at first their first instinct is to run or to be scared, but to actually sit down and spend time, it closes up.
Yeah.
If it mends the bridge of, I guess, the cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
So that's really lovely. And then my next question was just going to be like, do you have any anecdotal stories about wolves on the property and just, anything that you saw that kind of changed your own mindset have about wolves, or just any funny stories?
Oh yeah. So the wolves, every wolf has their own personality, just like we do. So every wolf is an individual, and it's really great watching them, whether it's in person or through our live streaming webcams, to learn those personalities. So we have our newest ambassador, Canary, who joined us
I think I saw
a few months ago.
Yeah, I saw him somewhere around
Yeah,
here.
so super tiny. And when Canary joined, she came in to live with Silas, who she still currently lives
I
with,
saw Silas.
and Nakai. And it was really great watching Silas, who's 2 years old, transition from being solely a younger brother into being also an older brother. And he kind of took Canary under his wing, and he plays with her. He's very patient with her.
So he matured.
He matured a bit,
Yeah.
exactly. And so it was really great to see that personality growth for Silas. And this is how wolves in the wild behave as well. They all help raise younger pups.
Oh, they do?
They
Okay.
do. So wolves live in families just like we do. And so older siblings help raise younger siblings. And so it was a really great reminder that this is a family. And wolves here are behaving exactly as they would in the wild. And so that was really great to see. And we've just been very lucky to see a lot of great families come through here. Mexican gray wolves, red wolves, and we learn so much from them. And it's also a really important reminder that wolves are very similar to us. And a lot of the things we might not like about wolves, we might even see inside ourselves.
Yeah, that's
So.
actually was my next question.
Okay.
Which was like, how do you identify, because you're with wolves for so long, out of the day, it's to a point where I'm sure like they can read your body language, you can read their body language, and you guys are kind of have this instinctual bond. But how can you read the body language of, whether a wolf is sad or expressing joy, and just the ways that they communicate? Have you learned to kind of figure that out?
Yeah, so there is always going to be some type of language gap, but we can learn a lot from wolves based on their body language. That's actually how wolves primarily communicate with each other, when they can see one another. Howls are more so reserved for long distance communication, or just like if they're chatting or celebrating. But if they're upset, yeah, exactly. But if they're upset or feeling playful, you can tell. So tail posture is really important. So if a wolf is feeling aggressive or wanting to appear larger, their tail's going to be up in the air. Their hackles, so the guard hairs on their shoulders, will also stand up as well.
Yeah.
So you might see that with dogs a
Yeah,
lot.
I see that I had a shepherd. And
Okay, yeah.
That happens a lot.
Perfect, yeah. So those hackles will go up. So you can tell when a wolf is feeling like they might need to go on the offense, or if they're starting to feel a little defensive. But when they're feeling playful or goofy, the tail starts to spin, just like a dog's would. They'll wag their tails. And so we can learn a lot just by looking at their body language. In terms of whether or not they're happy or sad, I think we like to think they're pretty much happy most of the time. We do know they go through periods of sadness. We've had wolves, mourn family members. They experience grief. And I think for us to assume that wolves wouldn't is just insulting, because they're sentient beings. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we know they experience a variety of emotions. We just might not be privy to knowing all the emotions they experience.
Yeah, I just was curious to get like an inside view of what it's like to see up close.
Yeah.
And also, I know that healing is a big part, because a lot of these wolves have been abandoned,
So actually, most of our wolves were either born here or born at other facilities as part of those breeding programs to release wolves to the wild.
Gotcha.
We do, however, have one wolf, a Mexican gray wolf, who was born in the wild.
Okay.
And he came to live with us because he was, it's a long story, but he was spending time with a female wolf, and they were spending time near livestock. And rather than moving the livestock, the Fish and Wildlife Service decided to move the wolves. And so Lighthawk, our Mexican gray wolf here, was captured, and we offered to take him in to give him a safe place to live. So he's our one wolf who hasn't been born in captivity. He's born in the wild. But the rest of our wolves here, barring any major injury, they just have their normal health exams once a year. So they go through routine veterinary exams, we draw blood, they're vaccinated, and that keeps up that bill of health. And so if they are released, we have a good track record of saying, yes, this wolf is relatively injury-free, illness-free, and that could increase their chances of release as well.
Okay, and what did you say the name of the Mexican
His name's Lighthawk.
Lighthawk. Okay.
Lighthawk,
What
yes.
is his healing journey been like? Because I can imagine it's traumatic having to go through that, but I'm sure here is where he can heal and kind of, regain a sense of self. So have you noticed any shifts in him since he came?
So he's been with us for quite some time now. So he actually came to live with us 2016, 2017, and he lived on his own at first, just to kind of adjust and ease in from being a fully wild wolf, able to go wherever he wants, to adjusting to living by the fence. But then he was introduced to one of our Mexican gray wolves who was born here, Trumpet, and they were introduced together, and they actually had pups the following year. So I think that helped because he had a family, and wolves are very family oriented. And so Trumpet's been great, and they've had several litters together over the years, and several of their kids have actually been released back to the wild.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been a kind of a full circle moment.
He's living his best life.
Yeah,
with a full family.
Yeah, we do. We know the wild is no longer an option for him, so we're happy that he's living the next best life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I guess the other question was just if you know any little unknown facts or things that would shock the public that maybe typically you don't hear about wolves. It could be educational, it could even be like political or things that are going on that the public should be aware about, but just any little...
Yeah, I think something that's important, and most of our visitors are shocked when they hear it, it's important that people know that wolves are hunted actively in several states. And in some states they can be hunted any day of the year. In some states they can be run over with snowmobiles and motorized vehicles. And so I think it's important that people realize, although wolves here are living a great life, a lot of wolves in the wild do face significant challenges, and it's because they're viewed as trophies, and people are killing them for fun. There's no scientific or ethical reason to kill wolves, and a lot of people, because it's not talked about in mainstream media, a lot of people don't realize that unless they're actively told. But it's hard to be a wolf in the wild. They do face a lot of challenges, whether it's from legal hunting or poaching, which is a threat to Mexican gray wolves and red wolves.
Yeah, poaching is a huge, huge issue. And it's also like a separate documentary that I'm looking at.
Oh, okay.
Poaching is a huge issue, but then they're also facing threats in the wild,
Yeah.
and then so many different threats from so many different areas. So I think that's why I'm always grateful for sanctuaries like this, because at least it offers some sort of resource.
Yes.
Now, despite their reputation as ruthless hunters, wolves are actually some of nature's biggest goofballs. They wrestle like puppies well into adulthood, sneaking up on pack mates, pouncing into snowbanks, and even playing tag for hours. Biologists have observed wolves sliding down icy slopes just for fun and tossing bones in the air like toys. Each pack has its own inside jokes of sorts, playing playful gestures and sounds that only their group understands. And those famous wolf howls that you hear, sometimes they're not warnings or calls to hunt. They're basically roll call karaoke, or a way to say, I'm here and I missed you. Scientists at Yellowstone even found that wolves howl louder and longer when their favorite friends are missing. Turns out, the big bad wolf might be a giant softie with serious social FOMO.
And it's also a really important reminder that wolves are very similar to us. And a lot of the things we might not like about wolves, we might even see inside ourselves.
Yeah, that's actually was my next question.
Okay.
Which was like, how do you identify, because you're with wolves for so long out of the day, it's to a point where I'm sure like they can read your body language, you can read their body language, and you guys are kind of have this instinctual bond. But how can you read the body language of, whether a wolf is sad or expressing joy, and just the way that they communicate? Have you learned to kind of figure that out?
So there is always going to be some type of language gap, but we can learn a lot from wolves based on their body language. That's actually how wolves primarily communicate with each other when they can see one another. Howls are more so reserved for long distance communication, or just like if they're chatting or celebrating. But if they're upset, but if they're upset or feeling playful, you can tell. So Tail posture is really important. So if a wolf is feeling aggressive or wanting to appear larger, their tail's going to be up in the air. Their hackles, so the guard hairs on their shoulders, will also stand up as well. So you might see that with dogs a lot.
Yeah, I see that I had a shepherd. And
okay, yeah.
That happens a lot.
Perfect, yeah. So those hackles will go up. So you can tell when a wolf is feeling like they might need to go on the offense, or if they're starting to feel a little defensive. But when they're feeling playful or goofy, the tail starts to spin, just like a dog's would. They'll wag their tails. And so we can learn a lot just by looking at their body language. In terms of whether or not they're happy or sad, I think we like to think they're pretty much happy most of the time. We do know they go through periods of sadness. We've had wolves, mourn family members. They experience grief. And I think for us to assume that wolves wouldn't is just insulting because they're sentient beings. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we know they experience a variety of emotions. We just might not be privy to knowing all the emotions they experience.
Yeah, I just was curious to get what it's like to see oppress. And also, I know that healing is a big part of a lot of people.
So actually, most of our wolves were either born here or born in other facilities as part of those breeding programs to release wolves to the wild. We do, however, have one wolf, a Mexican gray wolf, who was born in the wild.
Okay.
And he came to live with us because he was, it's a long story, but he was spending time with a female wolf, and they were spending time with livestock. And rather than moving the livestock, the Fish and Wildlife Service decided to move the wolves. And so Lighthawk, our Mexican gray wolf here, was captured, and we offered to take him in to give him a safe place to live. So he's our one wolf who hasn't been born in captivity. He's born in the wild. But the rest of our wolves here, barring any major injury, they just have their normal health exams once a year. So they go through routine veterinary exams. We draw blood, they're vaccinated, and that keeps up that bill of health. And so if they are released, we have a good track record of saying, yes, this wolf is relatively injury-free, illness-free, and that could increase their chances of release as well.
Okay, and what did you say the name of the Mexican?
His name's Lighthawk.
Lighthawk. Okay.
Lighthawk.
What
yes.
is his healing journey like? Because I can imagine it's traumatic having to go through that, but I'm sure here is where you heal and kind of, regain a sense of self.
Yeah.
So have you noticed any shifts in him since he came?
So he's been with us for quite some time now. So he actually came to live with us 2016, 2017, and he lived on his own at first, just to kind of adjust and ease in from being a fully wild wolf, able to go wherever he wants, to adjusting to living by the fence. But then he was introduced to one of our Mexican gray wolves who was born here, Trumpet, and they were introduced together, and they actually had pups the following year. So I think that helped because he had a family, and wolves are very family oriented. And so Trumpet's been great, and they've had several litters together over the years, and several of their kids have actually been released back to the wild. Yeah, so it's been a kind of a full circle moment.
He's living his best life.
Yeah,
with a full family.
We do. We know the wild is no longer an option for him, so we're happy that he's living the next best life.
Right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
When you think of wolves, you probably think of howling at the moon. You probably think of howling at the moon. But the deepest, rarest facts reveal a creature far more sophisticated. Wolves mourn. Studies show that when a pack member dies, the cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, in the remaining wolves rise significantly. This indicates a genuine, measurable state of stress and mourning over the loss of a loved one, much like human experiences. They also re-engineer rivers. In a stunning example of their ecological role, wolves hunting along riverbeds indirectly force prey animals like elk and moose to move more frequently. This allows streamside vegetation to regrow, which stabilizes the banks and over time changes the physical course and flow of the rivers themselves. Wolves literally reshape the physical landscape. They also have pack culture. Every wolf pack communicates, hunts, and raises its young according to a unique system. Older, experienced wolves pass down hunting strategies, survival techniques, and even preferred paths to their offspring. This intergenerational knowledge, This intergenerational knowledge transfer is best described by scientists as the existence of a distinct wolf culture unique to each pack. They're also master negotiators. Unlike the alpha myth, wolf packs are complex family units. Scientists have found that wolves can make peace after a conflict, console victims of aggression, and calm down the aggressors, which is a highly sophisticated set of post-conflict strategies that requires advanced social intelligence and emotional attentiveness, all of which wolves have. Lastly, they can get attached to humans. Recent studies contradict the old belief that only dogs can form deep bonds with people. When tested, that only dogs and domesticated animals can form deep bonds with people. When tested, wolves raised with minimal human contact showed a spontaneous ability to form a genuine attachment bond with their human caretakers, seeking out their presence for comfort during stressful situations, just as dogs do. If you really want to understand a wolf, take a look at your own family. Genetically, there's almost no difference between a wolf and a dog. They share 99.8% of their DNA, diverging from a common ancestor relatively recently. But the similarities don't end there. Wolves are governed by family life and social rituals that are incredibly close to our own. For instance, they exhibit complex behaviors that reveals a striking emotional depth. Not only do wolves mate for life, but their entire pack helps raise the young. Functioning as a multi-generational cooperative unit. They possess a deep capacity for post-conflict strategies, so after a fight, within the pack, wolves will engage in specific actions like licking or calming proximity to console the victim and ease tension. This level of reconciliation shows emotional intelligence, suggesting they actively seek social harmony, just like us. And just like us, they aren't strictly nocturnal. Wolves are crepuscular. Meaning they're most active during the dim light of dawn and dusk, following a sleep cycle designed to maximize safety and hunting success across the changing seasons. Despite wolves being just like us, humans and governments still choose to hunt them like prey.
I think that's the only way that we'll be able to see any change, especially now in today's in today's political climate, and just everything that's been being rolled back when it comes to environmental rights and so many different things when it comes to hunting and things like that, which, you know, later I would love to get your opinion on. But for now, and when it comes to the facility, what would you say is something that people would be shocked to see, you know, as a part of your daily life at the facility?
I think there are certain departments that are more hands-on when it comes to the health and well-being of the wolves. So some members of our team are actively preparing diets to feed the wolves, and we do actually collect roadkill deer from the surrounding streets.
I was just going to ask, what's their diet? Like, what is their
wolves,
meal prep?
So wolves are carnivores. They might eat things that aren't meat. We feed the wolves eggs, fruits, things like that, but they will mostly follow a carnivorous diet. So they're going to be eating meat. And in the wild, their main food source would be ungulates, so hoofed animals. And we try to mimic that here. So we will go pick up roadkill from the surrounding streets, deer that are struck and killed by cars, and we feed those deer carcasses to our red wolves and our Mexican gray wolves, those releasable wolves, because we want them to be prepared if/when they are released, eating the food they would find in the wild, that whole carcass prey. It's great for their gut health. It's great for social development, so pups can learn what and how they should be eating, because an entire family will eat at once, feeding off of the same carcass. They'll play like tug of war with bones and antlers, so they really do use an entire carcass, and so we try to mimic that here as best as we can.
A lot of the same social constructs.
Exactly.
That you would see outside.
We want every enclosure here to be basically a mini ecosystem,
Okay.
where you have vultures coming in because they're scavengers, and so they pick up the leftovers. We have raccoons that get in. The only animals that can't get into our enclosures are deer, coyotes, bears, animals that can't get over the fence.
Yeah.
But every other, we have songbirds, we have small rodents, so it is very similar to what you would see in the wild.
With the Trump administration, we have been seeing just incredible, egregious rollbacks on animal rights, environmental protections, mining in Alaska, drilling. To indigenous people and indigenous species and animals as well. So I would love to get your thoughts about that.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we are no longer at a point where wildlife and environmental protections are bipartisan. It would be nice to get back to that point because the Endangered Species Act was passed bipartisanly and under a Republican president. So we're at a point where everyone agreed that we have to protect the environment. We have to protect wildlife. So it'd be nice to get back to that point. We're not currently at that moment, at least not broadly. So we are concerned. You'll hear terms of, this is the 6th mass extinction. We do have species going extinct every day. And we are seeing threats to wolves. We're seeing cuts, wolves potentially being removed from the endangered species list. When the Trump administration in the first term removed wolves from the endangered species list, Wisconsin held a wolf hunt because they weren't able to when wolves are protected. And they held a wolf hunt, and hunters killed over 200 wolves in less than 3 days. So we are concerned.
That is so sick. And I feel like it's almost like sociopathic.
Oh, it is.
Right?
Oh, it is.
Like,
it is.
There's definitely some linkage.
There's no
between,
reason
there's
to
no
do that.
reason why you would slaughter.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what it was, a slaughter.
Yeah.
And so I think we know what can happen, and so we're trying to avoid from getting back to that point. But like you said, we're seeing, habitats are at risk of being protected, and so if an animal doesn't have a place to live, where is that animal going to go? And so that can lead to extinction. So we're seeing a lot of challenges. But I think what we have really been trying to internalize is, yes, we're playing defense, but we also need to get really aggressive and play offense. And we need to be more proactive. Rather than waiting for an attack, let's, try to get people talking in ways they haven't. Maybe try to get legislation introduced or encourage these conversations, change state law, because there will come a point when wolves don't have federal protections. And that's the point of the Endangered Species Act. The goal of the Endangered Species Act is to save a species from extinction. However, there's no other species, except for wolves, that are so aggressively targeted after they lose protections. So we also need to change state level protections, and let's make states a safe haven. So if they don't have federal safeguards, then maybe states will step up and they'll ban hunting. So there's been bills that have been introduced in Minnesota for the last few terms that would ban wolf hunting in the state. So, maybe that's something that can be carried out. Maybe we can make wildlife commissions who work in each state. Maybe they can become more friendly towards non-consumptive users. So people who don't hunt, people who aren't fishing, but people who appreciate wildlife. Maybe they can start to include them more, and we can start to see a gradual change. And we might look back in 50 years and realize, wow, we actually had a lot of change.
That was a lot of change. And it's all momentum. And I think
exactly.
It all comes from, honestly, a big part of it is, like you said, offense.
Yeah, exactly.
We're so used to, I think, with any movements, playing defense because we're constantly being attacked.
Exactly.
So you have to,
you might not even have time to create a strategy.
You don't
but
have time.
We should start actively thinking about that.
Yeah, actively being in, this offensive strategy.
Yeah.
And I think that sounds, what you just said, sounds like a perfect plan to, really revolutionize animal rights, not just for wolves, but in general.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And then I know you have to go, so I just have a few more questions, and it'll be done. So, I don't know if you're comfortable speaking about this, but I was just wondering about your thoughts on zoos, because I know that there's a big, I guess it's really polarized. people are having policy fights around that, and animal rights workers are working to try to break free a lot of the animals that are in the zoo, or like the horse carriages that you see.
Yeah. Oh, you should definitely ask Rebecca about the horse carriages.
Yeah. The horse carriages.
No, I think intent matters, and so I think we all agree that the best place for an animal is the wild, but not every animal is at a point where they can be released to the wild. There were decades where red wolves and Mexican gray wolves were kept in captivity, and those animals weren't going to be released, but their future generations were. And so I think as long as the long-term and ultimate goal is species welfare, and both also individual welfare as well, so not losing sight of the individual to recover the species, but also recognizing that individuals matter too. I think it's always going to be a debate, and we work with a lot of zoos as part of these recovery programs. So again, I think as long as there's a clear purpose and a clear end goal, I think it would also be, we have to recognize, like, I recognize my privilege in seeing wolves every day, but I also recognize that someone who lives in Manhattan might never see a wild animal unless they can go to the wrong zoo. And so that might be the first time they see an animal and they really connect and they become inspired. And so I think also we will hopefully get to a point where people don't need to see an animal to feel empathy towards them.
That's what I was going to
say.
But
I think right now we are still at a point where those in-person sightings and connections do a lot. I think you could make a case either way.
Yeah, I think either of those would be really great options. It is unfortunate that people need to physically see an animal in order to express empathy for it.
Exactly.
But, I mean, I guess it's human nature at this point.
Yeah, it's one of those things maybe to work towards long term.
Yeah, to work towards long term.
Yeah.
But my last question is just, what role do hunting policies, habitat destruction, or private ownership play in endangering wolves? And what sort of loopholes do you think allow them to, get away with this for so long?
Yeah, so hunting groups, there's ethical hunters, hunters who follow certain models. Many ethical hunters won't hunt predators. They are subsistence hunters and they only hunt to feed themselves. And so for people who eat meat, it would be very similar to you going to a grocery store and buying an animal that was killed through a variety of ways, versus someone who maybe lives out west or doesn't live near a grocery store. Maybe it's more cost effective to go out and find their own food. So many ethical hunters do not support killing wolves. They don't support killing bears because there's no reason. And so killing wolves doesn't, protect humans. There's no threat to physical safety. A wolf has never, in the last 100 years, a healthy wolf has never attacked and killed a person in North America.
I don't think I've ever.
So there's no risk for human safety. Killing wolves doesn't stop livestock attacks. So it's not like you're going to protect your farm by killing wolves. It can actually increase livestock attacks. Killing wolves doesn't, protect native elk herds. Wolves aren't decimating elk populations. So there's no reason to kill wolves.
Of the misinformation that you
exactly.
hear,
But these are the arguments that are
off.
given, that's why hunting is a thing.
Yeah.
So there's no reason to kill wolves. And in fact, hunting as a category is declining among Americans. So it's dropping. And so more Americans, I think, I'd have to check the stats and can send it to you after. I think like a majority of Americans take part in some type of non-consumptive wildlife activity. 7% are hunters. But like a majority of Americans enjoy getting out into nature and watching wildlife in some fashion. So most people in this country don't hunt. But a lot of policies are catered towards hunters. And so that's when things get tricky. There's also a lot of emphasis on public lands grazing and the livestock industry, and that is especially threatening for wolves. There's a branch of the USDA, so the Department of Agriculture. It's called Wildlife Services, and it's little known, but they use taxpayer dollars and they kill millions of native species every year to protect livestock. Wildlife Services.
Wildlife Services.
Yeah, it's an incorrect name for what they do.
Yeah, I'm like.
Oh yeah, no, they use poison. They like gas wolf pups in dens.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so they kill wildlife to protect agriculture and livestock. Yeah, so that's a huge challenge and threat to wolves. And then with public lands grazing, Mexican gray wolves, for example, they live in the Southwest and they primarily share the landscape with cows because people can graze their livestock on these allotments at a very cheap fee. It's like $1.35 per cow-calf pair per month. But if someone were grazing on private lands, they could be charged like $20,000 a month to graze there. So you're getting subsidized by the American taxpayers. So our taxpayer dollars are being used to subsidize a rancher down in the Southwest who might then be saying, well, a Mexican wolf is on my property, you should kill them. So Mexican wolves are killed to benefit the livestock industry. And so there's a lot of challenges that have kind of been created because in the early 1900s, we killed off wolves. And so people have grown these businesses without wolves, without predators, and now they're being forced to evolve and adapt. And they're saying that wolves are ruining their business, but every other business is forced to adapt.
Right.
Like we have to evolve and change as the market changes and meet these challenges. So why is there one subset of people that's being heavily subsidized? Exactly, that's refusing to do it. That demanding,
monetized.
Yeah, exactly.
Demanding money at the same time.
Yeah.
Which begs the difference who are those people and what connections they have.
Exactly. Department of the Interior,
exactly.
So wolves once lived all across North America. North America was home to gray wolves and red wolves, and at one point, pre-European settlers arriving, there were estimated to be about 2 million wolves living across the continent. But with settlers arriving and killing wolves, bounty programs were established, so people were getting money for killing wolves.
And what year was this?
Bounty programs were established as early as the late 1600s.
Oh, wow.
There were some of the first laws established along the East Coast, and so people were getting money for killing wolves, and so this caused the wolf population to drop, and then westward expansion also resulted in a wolf population decline. So in the 1970s, there were estimated to be under 700 wolves left in the lower 48 states, and that's when the Endangered Species Act was passed. So in 1973, the Endangered Species Act was created, and in the following years, gray wolves, red wolves, and Mexican gray wolves were all given protections under the Act. And then those protections allowed us to start recovery plans and have captive breeding and then wild releases. But the Endangered Species Act has been very successful for wolves, especially for gray wolves. It has allowed their numbers to grow. Exactly.
Yeah,
so gray wolves now live across the West. So they live in Washington, Oregon, California, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota,
so they're like
Colorado.
Back.
So they are on their way back. So we are facing still some challenges. So there are attempts to remove gray wolves from the endangered species list, which to some people it's a confusing topic.
The most dangerous predator these wolves will ever see doesn't have teeth or claws. It has a pen and lives on Capitol Hill. While WCC and their team act as archivists, preserving priceless genetic lines, political decisions hundreds and thousands of miles away are basically deciding death sentences for the wolves. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, known as USFWS, decided to delist the gray wolves as endangered species. This study was published despite its own commissioned scientific peer reviews, finding that the proposal ignored the science and lacked adequate support. Reviewers suggested the agency appeared to be working toward a predetermined conclusion. When the delisting was overturned by a federal court in 2022, a key detail was the court's finding that the USFWS had attempted a statutory dodge. The agency tried to delist the wolf entities by arguing they didn't meet the current narrow definition of a species under the ESA. rather than meeting the high standards for delisting a recovered species. The court found this was an impermissible backdoor route to removing federal protections. But the most insidious threat was a proposed change to the Endangered Species Act itself. For decades, the law made it illegal to take an endangered animal, and that protection included a crucial common sense rule that harm meant destroying the vital habitat an animal needs to survive. This was a safety net for 81% of all listed species. The administration proposed a semantic trick to create a lethal legal loophole. They argued that harm should only refer to direct physical actions like hunt, shoot, wound, or kill. This means that an oil company could completely bulldoze the last remaining breeding forest for a northern spotted owl, or drain the last wetland for a Florida manatee and not be legally penalized simply because they didn't shoot the animals themselves. This action is framed as a technical correction, but it's really a legal maneuver to strip away the safety net for all imperiled wildlife, and it's a death sentence passed through legislation, leaving animals to die of starvation, exposure, or lost shelter. While the gray wolf got national attention, the critically endangered red wolf, also known as Canis rufus, a separate species in the southeast, was facing an existential threat. The Trump-era USFWS actively hampered recovery efforts by proposing to essentially end reintroduction, drastically reducing the recovery area to a single county in North Carolina, and allowing private landowners to shoot wolves that wandered outside the zone, significantly accelerating the species slide into quasi-execution in the wild. That is when the final blow was delivered by Project 2025. Project 2025 targeted wildlife everywhere with specific ESA targets. The sweeping project blueprint called for specific direct actions beyond just weakening the ESA overall. It directly recommends delisting the gray wolf and the grizzly bear and proposes reinstating Trump-era rules that redefined critical habitat and critical habitat exclusions. Two regulations that are vital for protecting the land wolves and other listed animals need to survive and recover. This is a critical missing piece for connecting policy to consequence, particularly using the emotional weight of a swift, brutal hunt. The moment federal protections were stripped from the gray wolf, it created a legal kill switch that led to immediate, undeniable carnage. Within the weeks of the Trump administration's delisting in early 2021, states seized control. The most infamous example occurred in Wisconsin, where spurred by a court order for a hunter advocacy group, the state rushed a wolf hunt in February 2021, a time when wolves are pregnant and often less than 3 days after the season began. Hunters exceeded the quota by nearly 100 wolves, killing at least 218 animals. This included pregnant females, crippling entire packs, and sending recovery efforts into shock. For the indigenous Ojibwe tribes who view the wolves as a relative and declined to participate, this was a moment of profound cultural disrespect and tragedy. This cascade effect, where a single policy stroke leads to hundreds of animals being cut down, trapped with neck snares, or left to bleed out in the snow, is the terrifying real-life consequences of weakening the ESA. This policy assault extended far beyond wolves, acting as a systematic attack on the legal foundations protecting all U.S. endangered species. The little-known fact is that by proposing to redefine harm to exclude habitat destruction, the administration was directly challenging the protection of 81% of all listed species, the proportion for which habitat loss and degradation is the primary threat. This single change would immediately jeopardize species whose recovery is inextricably linked to the environment, such as the Florida manatee, which, threatened by boat strikes, also faced starvation from habitat-choking toxic algae, or the northern spotted owl, whose protections rely almost entirely on preventing the logging of its old growth forest habitat, or the Chinook salmon, whose survival depends on protecting its river migration and spawning grounds from modification. Not only that, but in 2019, regulatory changes eliminated the automatic protections previously afforded to all threatened species. Those likely to become endangered, meaning that threatened animals like the green turtle or the grizzly bear could lose crucial habitat protections without a new resource and intensive rulemaking process. A subtle but profound shift from proactive conservation to reactive crisis management for thousands of species. The cumulative effect was the administration's stated goal of prioritizing resource extraction, such as timber, oil, gas, and mining, over the ecological health that sustains all wildlife.
How are you?
Hey, nice to meet you. Welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Rebecca.
I'm Talia. Rebecca?
Yes.
This place is so beautiful.
Yes. Welcome to the Wolf Conservation Center.
Yay. Can we walk around?
Of course, absolutely.
It's so beautiful. Who's this little guy?
So this is Silas. He's one of our ambassador wolves, or education wolves. And he lives here with his younger sister, who's somewhere, Canary. She's still a puppy. She's just about 5 months old. I don't know where she is. She'll show her face sooner or later.
She'll pop up.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's just do it one more time.
My other question is, what is one policy, whether local or national, that you really hope to change surrounding animal rights and environmental rights?
Oh boy. I don't know if it's a policy specifically. And it's always been sort of within me that, animals are not treated well in any form, whether it's wolves, whether it's wild animals, whether it's farm animals. They're always treated as lesser than people. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we all have our purpose on this planet, and we are no better than a snake or a tortoise or a pig or a wolf. I think we're all, and sometimes I think humans are actually below most animals.
I would say so too. I definitely would say so.
I mean,
as well.
we're a very selfish species. There's too many of us.
Parasitic.
Yeah.
I would say.
To the earth. Yeah, we're destroying this planet.
Yeah.
And there are good people out there. Like here you are, trying to get the word out. And so some of us are doing what we can, the best we can. But it would be nice if animals were viewed more as something that has value, as much value as a person.
And as much value outside of how they can serve you. Like
Yes.
dogs are there for your entertainment to make you happy and bring your mood up. Cats are there to do the same thing and, catch mice. And, cows are your food and your steak and chicken. So it's like animals are always viewed as like a utilitarian thing or something that belongs to people just solely for enjoyment or pleasure.
Yeah.
But I hope we can get to a point where animals are just viewed solely
For who they
for
are
exist,
and their
just to
purpose.
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have every right to be. And these wolves, we've taken their habitat. We've taken the landscape that they need to survive.
Yeah.
And we're taking more and more, and not just wolves, put tigers in, put bears, put big cats, any animal that's out there. Even here, this is an hour north of New York City, and we have a lot of open space, but they're pockets. And we have coyotes, we have bear, people complain when there's a coyote in their backyard. Where are they supposed to go?
Where are they supposed to go? Like that's what I hate to see when you're like shooting coyotes and just torturing animals that are on their land.
Exactly.
They're
They were
literally
here
on their
first.
homeland.
They were here first.
Which I think it goes into a bigger issue of like colonization and like colonizers' minds of, you know, who it deserves to be here and who doesn't. So that's a whole other topic. But going back to what we were talking about, how is climate change sort of alternating the natural habitats and food sources of the wolf? Like, have you noticed there's been any weird sort of climate impacts or climate changes that's been disturbing the ecosystem here?
Yeah, it hasn't been proven yet, I guess, per se, but we're finding actually, so wolves are monoestrous, meaning they breed once a year. So typically breeding season is January, February, and then their gestation is like dogs, 62 days, and they have pups in the spring, so that the pups then have the summer to grow up and be ready to move with the pack come winter.
Okay.
So we're finding, at least with Mexican and red wolves, that breeding seems to be happening a little later. It's just getting a little later. And so does climate have something to do with that? Possibly. You know, I grew up here. We used to have snow all the time, and we used to have snow early. Now,
And I'm sure they would love that.
they love snow.
They love
They
snow.
love snow.
Yeah.
I don't, but they do. But now we usually don't get snow before the holidays. Usually it's January, middle of January. So things are being shifted, you know, and it's definitely having an impact. I can't say specifically and say, you know,
On like behavior or anything?
no behavior. I mean, they're so adaptable. Wolves can adapt to anything. I find they really, you give them enough space, you leave them alone.
Yeah. And
They are
good.
super adaptable. Yeah, they make it, as long as they have prey, they have a food source, a water source, you know, but it's land. You know, we take away there's so little, wild spaces are just diminishing. And it's a problem.
It
And
is.
it's getting worse.
It's getting much worse, and I guess that feeds into the next question, which goes into indigenous rights. Because, you know, wild spaces, they are decreasing and they're slowly being pulled away. And it's the same thing with a lot of indigenous people across the globe are experiencing environmental racism and their homes being pulled away. And then not even that, a lot of indigenous communities have personal connections to wolves and to the very animals that were here. So I'm just wondering, does your organization partner with any sort of, you know, indigenous groups or work with any indigenous based community groups who help to, I guess, give some of their knowledge around like the best ways and practices?
Yeah. You know, the Red Wolf program as a whole does.
Okay.
Us as a singular or specific organization, now that our staff is growing, I think that we have more room to be able to do that. You know, we were a very small staff for a very long time, and there's only so much everyone can do,
Right.
unfortunately.
I hear you, yeah.
So I feel now that we have a team of educators and just more people with boots on the ground, I think we can certainly do more of that. It's just, you know, even though we've been here since 1999, we're still a young organization, and so I think that's a whole realm that we should grow into, no doubt. But I know the Red Wolf program as a program, I don't remember which indigenous group, but there actually was a film that was recently screened about an indigenous group and their connection to red wolves.
Yeah,
Actually,
it's
Waya? I can get you the name of it. I don't
know
remember.
what you're talking about because I don't remember the name, but this was like a topic that I was really interested in for a long time. So yeah, I think it might have been Waya.
Maybe we
have to check.
at the meeting this year they screened it, and I can get you the name of it. But it was all about that connection.
Yeah.
And you know,
And it's a deep connection. And the reason why I bring it up is because I feel like it's reflective of whatever happens to indigenous communities in turn happens to, you know, wolves and the people who are a part, or the animals that are a part of that ecosystem.
absolutely.
So,
And they knew how to live with them.
yeah.
You know, and we don't.
Yeah.
We're trying.
For sure. How do you feel you could reach younger demographics? Are there any like sort of school trips or even reaching like younger inner city people? Because I know for me, I grew up in the inner city of Philadelphia and I could have never imagined coming to a place like this when I was in school. But I know that if I did, it probably would have unlocked so many doors and it would have unlocked so many different like thought processes, not surrounding animal rights, but also like careers in animal rights or things like that. Yeah. And I think it's something that a lot of inner city, especially Black or BIPOC students don't really get access to.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm just curious, do you have any school programs or any sort of partnerships with schools to...
Yeah, I mean, education is the one thing I don't do here.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But, you know, we're open to the public. We have a lot of schools that come visit us. We have throughout the year school bus after school bus of groups of people that come. You know, now, since COVID, just like everyone, we had to pivot and offer virtual programming. And it helped us now, kind of, I would say, brought us to another level with that. So thanks to our virtual programming, we can offer our program and these wolves to anybody on the planet, which is awesome. And we've done a lot more of that thanks to COVID. If there's any positive that came out of that, I would say that it really forced everyone, not just us, into that new mode. Yeah. You know, so yeah. And you know, when we do those virtual programs, the camera can go right up to the fence. You can get a nose right into the camera.
I watch them as ASMR to go to sleep. Like I'll put on.
Oh, really?
You guys have like a YouTube channel?
Yeah.
So I'll watch it to go to sleep.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's so peaceful.
Yeah, and you know, we have our live cameras that every enclosure has.
Yeah.
That people are obsessed with. So we can really bring these wolves into your living room, no matter where on the planet you live. So, and like I said, you know, now that we're bigger, we have a bigger education team. I feel like we can do far more than we ever could before, virtually and bringing people here. And we are close to, you know, we're close to New York City, so there's no excuse not to do it. And if it's a funding thing, you know, scholarships or what have you. I know busing is expensive, and again, this is not my realm here, but you know, I mean, I know there's ways we can definitely. There's so many things that can be done. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say I appreciate your time, and were there any other questions that maybe you wanted to get to, or just anything you wanted to share with the audience that you think should be out there?
No, I think you covered a lot of great stuff, and I know, and I saw that, you know, I know you covered a lot of great stuff with Regan too. So I'm sure between the two of us, you covered, you know, everything. And I thank you for, again, you know, you can't have too much PR, and you know, people are going to watch this, and however way you put it out there, that have probably never heard of us, have never seen a wolf, and it just takes that, you know, that one person, that one mind that you change to spark a wave and make a difference. And you know, obviously we focus on wolves here, but this is for all animals, you know, for other endangered species. So we're all sort of part of the same village doing the same good work.
We're all in the same village. That's really what I'm hoping for as well is, you know, you can't change everything in a day, but you can chip away.
Yes.
And you can have some power behind that act and have some assistance behind it. Yeah. So I just want to thank you for being that act, that assistant.
Trying.
Yeah. Chipping away at it every day. And I'm honored to even be able to share
it's great. And people, you know, seeing behind the scenes, seeing the wolves up close, they're the mind changers.
They are.
You know, they have sacrificed. Granted, they were born in this situation, but they should, like I said, they should be wild. We should be able to close our doors. As much as I love what I do, you know, and not exist. But unfortunately, I don't see that anytime soon. But while we're here, we can at least do the best we can with getting the message out. And there was a big cat biologist who was a good friend of mine that passed away, Dr. Alan Rabinowitz. He's written many books, and he was one of my mentors, and he's an amazing human being.
What's his name?
Dr. Alan Rabinowitz.
Alan Rabinowitz.
Yeah, and he's known for big cats. And he used to say it takes a village to save a species. And I use that quote all the time because it's not just, it's the educators, it's the veterinarians. You know, our amazing volunteers that pick up the dead deer off the roads.
Yeah, the volunteers,
I mean, we have one volunteer, Bill, who picks up, I'd say 90% of our deer. It's a dirty job that not many people want to do. It feeds our wolves. You know, our veterinarians, we have a team of amazing volunteers. We don't pay for vet care, which I don't know anybody that can say that. I mean, they give us their time.
Like, to actually have a full-sourced team willing to give your time for free. That is a blessing, and the fact that they're quality too.
Yes. They're the best.
Yeah,
they're really
amazing.
And we have so many. I don't have to overburden any one of them. So,
but it speaks to the testament of this place. I would say it's like when you're here, it's just a lighter energy, and it attracts people. Who also are into that.
Exactly. So. The energy here is amazing.
Yeah.
And it attracts good people, and we're very lucky. We're super lucky.
So I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Much.
Amidst the policy battles and the tragedy of the hunts, there are small victories rooted in dedicated on-the-ground work, and a crucial beacon of hope sits in Salem, New York. Amidst the policy battles and tragedy of the hunts, there are small victories rooted in dedicated on-the-ground work, and a crucial beacon of hope sits in Salem, New York, the Wolf Conservation Center. The WCC's mission goes far beyond basic sanctuary. They're one of the largest and most vital holding facilities in the federal recovery programs for two of America's most imperiled canids, the Mexican gray wolf, also known as the lobo, and the red wolf. Their work is forensic and precise. Deep inside their private endangered species facility, critically endangered wolves are kept strictly off exhibit and given minimal human contact to ensure they retain their natural wariness, a critical survival skill they'll need for release. The center is involved in the meticulous species survival plan, managing complex breeding to maximize genetic diversity across the captive population. But the WCC's most extraordinary contribution is the technique of cross-fostering. This is a high-stakes clockwork operation. A captive-born pup no larger than a pound and sometimes just 10 days old is born at the WCC, immediately flown across the country and placed into a den of a wild pack in the Southwest. The wild alpha female, whose maternal instincts kick in, raises the captive pup alongside her own litter. This process is a genetic lifeline, injecting crucial diversity into the tiny inbred wild population, and the WCC has successfully contributed several pups who went on to be raised in the wild and even reproduce themselves. Beyond their recovery programs, the WCC employs unique research methods, allowing scientists to study everything from wolf hearing and social behavior to how captive wolves orientate themselves to the Earth's magnetic field. All data used to better understand and protect their wild kin. They're not just saving wolves, they're saving the possibility of a wild, healthy ecosystem. It's not all hopeless. If you're wondering how to get involved, one thing I really want to note is that it's not all hopeless. One thing I want to note is that despite all these major policy change and targeting of animals, it's not all hopeless. If you're wondering how to get involved and help, the answer starts with action. First, directly support the Wolf Conservation Center. You can adopt a wolf to help fund their vital Mexican gray and red wolf recovery work. Donate to their center or visit their South Salem Center for a tour to meet their ambassador wolves, giving you a powerful, personal connection to the animals whose future you are fighting for. Beyond the WCC, be strategic with your resources. Direct your donations to conservation groups like the WCC that prioritize habitat and ecological recovery over special interests. Organizations focused on science-based advocacy and legal defense.
I love what you said about that. It's just letting them be free, wild animals. What has it been like on the day-to-day of running the facility? Like, can you walk us through what a typical day might be like?
Sure, yeah. So no 2 days are the same. We have a variety of staff. When our organization first started, we were primarily volunteer supported. And we hired staff starting in the early 2000s. And so today our staff is the largest it's ever been. So we have, people that can really specialize. And so we've moved away from that mentality of everyone does everything.
Right.
And so
like kind of bootstrap.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like everyone's doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
Everyone's straddling multiple departments. So now we do have staff that are much more specialized. So we've been able to bring in experts in their respective fields. So I am our director of education and advocacy. So I oversee all of our education, whether it's on-site, off-site, or virtual programming. And then I also...
What does that entail?
So we are, as part of our mission, so we are working to advance the survival of wolves by inspiring a global community through education, advocacy, research, and recovery. And we think education can connect the public to those other aspects of the mission.
Definitely.
So we offer on-site programs, we offer off-site programs where we'll go to schools, libraries. We also offer virtual programs as well. And so on a yearly basis, we're reaching anywhere from 18 to 20,000 people through dedicated education programming. So people are actively learning about wolves. We're teaching
All
them
across the country.
all across the country.
Okay.
We're teaching people about the ecological role of wolves and why it's important to have wolves to maintain healthy ecosystems. We're talking about wolf diet, family behaviors, dispelling those myths we had talked about, but we're also empowering people. And so after they finish an education program, we want any person to be able to go tell a friend, tell a family member about wolves, because at the end of the day, people's thoughts and what they believe really matter. And so we want people to learn, especially from people they already know.
Yeah, it's a better way.
Exactly. You trust these people, so we want them to learn that wolves are animals we should respect. But also we are at, unfortunately, a bit of a crossroads when it comes to wolves in this country. It's a political hot topic. Wolves have been in the crosshairs for some time. And so we also want people, if they feel comfortable, to use their voice and contact their representatives, to contact legislators, speak up for wolves, whether wolves live in their state or wolves live elsewhere across the country. We want people to get involved and be engaged in
Many different titles and roles, but I'm curious, how do you feel, do you feel the wolves recognize and trust you by now? Like, do you think now when you interact with them, there's some sort of familial bond that's there?
Yeah, so I assume you're talking about our ambassador education wolves. Okay, because obviously our recovery wolves is a whole different level of husbandry.
Or you could explain both.
The difference, yeah, because we have two very different populations here. So as you know, we're involved in the recovery of the red wolf and the Mexican gray wolf, two critically endangered species. And because they are endangered, we're part of a larger program called the SAFE, or Saving Animals from Extinction program, which is under the AZA umbrella, which is American Zoo and Aquariums. So we're a participant among many other zoos and centers like us with them. So with these wolves, because they might have the potential to be released to the wild, their offspring may have the potential to be released to the wild, it's a very, very hands-off way of caring for them. We can't give them a daily meatball with a medication. There's no interaction, there's no relationship, because anything like that could potentially get them killed should they be released to the wild. So flipping that coin, our ambassador roles, our education roles, we have Nikai, who's sitting over there, Silas and Canary. They absolutely. They're Canadian Rocky Mountain Grey Wolves. They were born in captivity with the plan of being either in a zoo or a facility like ours. This type of wolf is not endangered. This is a wolf you would find in Yellowstone National Park or Canada. And so we only have 3 of them, and they are here for education. They are our voices, they're our teachers, they're the mind changers here. So we raise them to be like this. Wolves have an inherent fear of people. They're born knowing people are bad news. It's in their DNA to want to stay away from people.
Which makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. It's what keeps them alive. Right? Yeah.
Based on reality.
Yeah. So knowing that, when to socialize the wolf, to have them this comfortable, there's a special process to do that. Like I said, they were born in captivity. They need to be pulled from their parents before their eyes open, which is around 14 days, and they have to be bottle fed with a human. So the facility where they come from, these particular wolves, they do that. And then we get them around 4 weeks of age. So I have raised previous generations of wolves. I've raised our current 3 wolves. So I know them very well, obviously. They do know me. They do have a level of trust with me. They still know I'm not a wolf, and they know I'm still a human. So
you still have a special connection.
We do. I have a German Shepherd. He's my pet.
I used to have a shepherd.
Oh, really?
When I was a kid. My childhood dog.
They're wonderful. They're loyal.
They really are.
They're obedient, protective.
But big babies.
Big babies. Yes. The wolf is none of that.
The wolf is none of that. We'll be having none of that.
It's the best way to compare it. My shepherd would protect me, right? He would stand in front of me. He would go whatever he would have to do if he thought that I was in danger. If I travel or have to leave him behind, he pines for me. He waits for me. He waits at the door. That's what he does. Yeah. I've raised them, right? I've spent an immense amount of time with them as puppies. They know me very well. I'm their primary human in their life. They don't pine for me. They don't have no interest in protecting me. Nakai, come! They don't listen to me.
It's interesting because they're kind of pet-like in a way.
Yeah.
Where pets, you could raise them, feed them, but at the end of the day, they're going to do their own thing.
Exactly. That's actually a good analogy for people, is that they have the big difference between wolves and dogs is wolves have no interest in pleasing people.
Yeah.
And why should they?
Yeah, they
right?
shouldn't.
They're wolves. So they're not pets. We're not trying to make them pets. They're here for a very specific and very important role. These guys are spayed and neutered, so we do not breed these wolves. We only breed our critically endangered wolves. There are plenty of wolves in captivity doing this sort of job, and so we try to accomplish that on our education side of things with as few of these kinds of wolves as possible. We would never have a pack of 10 because we can accomplish just as much with what we have and change minds, which is really what their purpose is. So to answer your question, they do have a level of trust. A stranger were to walk in there, they wouldn't do anything. They'd probably leave because they'd be like, "Who are you?" Because they have I don't know you.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Head out.
I have a very small but very dedicated group of people that's on my animal care team that helps raise them, and they've pretty much dedicated their lives to these animals, and they're mostly volunteers, believe it or not.
Oh, really? So they just come in as
we have a schedule. They come in as needed. Every week they come and they spend time. They clean, change the water. I have a veterinarian on my team. I have a vet tech on my team. I'm also a vet tech, and so so it's wonderful. But I don't take this role lightly because God willing, he'll live 15, 16 years. It's a long life, just like your dog. And so anybody that I bring onto my team, I need you to commit to them. They can't have transient people coming in and out of their lives because it just doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
So
unstable and too much instability.
Yeah. So it's kind of a long answer to yes, they trust me, but that trust only goes to a certain point. Yeah. Because they still know I'm a person. They're still, even though we raised them the way we did, they're still weary. If we were to put, I don't know, a tractor in there, he would be like, what is that? It's a human. They're very weary of man-made things, as they should be. Yes, so even with all this intense socialization, the time we spent, the number of people they see, they still are wolves, and you can never, thankfully, change that. Because we get, people always want wolves as pets, and I always tell people, get a husky.
Literally, I don't know how legal this is, but I've been seeing people with dogs.
Yes.
I'm curious your thoughts on if that's ethical or...
I'm not a proponent of that. We're not a proponent of that. Okay. Wolves are wild and they belong in the wild. And again, these guys have a very specific purpose. And, like we were saying earlier, if we could close and shut down, then our job has been accomplished, right? Having these animals in captivity behind walls, even though they have beautiful enclosures, one enclosure is 2 acres. This is an acre for an animal. He's got a pond, he's got dens. It's a great way to be if you're going to live in captivity, right? Right, yeah, totally. But he deserves to be wild. They all do. So I'm now going off on tangents of what we were originally talking about.
No, we were talking about the wolf hybrid.
The hybrids. So when you mix nature with something like a dog that's human created, you get an animal. People want something that looks like a wolf that acts like your German Shepherd. You don't often get that. Sometimes, maybe you do, but these animals end up being euthanized. They end up going to sanctuaries that are all full. We work with some facilities that also do hybrid rescue. They're full. They get calls constantly because these people
don't know
can't
how to take care of them.
Correct. They can't handle them. They're not dogs. And in many states it's illegal. So that's another layer.
I didn't know it was.
Yes, it's illegal in the state of New York. I can't go through all the states that are. Some states it's not illegal, but here it is illegal. But even if it wasn't illegal, it's why we have dogs. Leave the wild, and huskies happen to be very independent.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, if you want an animal that's not going to listen to you, then there are certain breeds that can fulfill that role.
But that just goes into, I feel like, the nature of sometimes certain people who just
it's very gluttonous. Like you just want more and more and more to serve you and to serve your emotions, but with no afterthought of what this is doing to the animal. So.
The animal, and then wolves as a whole. Because if a hybrid bites somebody or some bad incident occurs, all people are going to hear is a wolf.
Yeah.
It's all people are going to hear. And then it will trickle down and come down onto these animals that already have a reputation that they do not deserve.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess on the same vein of that, what is something that people would be shocked to hear about wolves that you feel like is either misinformation that's spread or, just it could even be something fun, lighthearted. Like, just the cool thing is that, hey, I never knew that about wolves.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many fun facts about wolves. They're fascinating creatures. They're family-oriented. They're so intelligent. They're emotional. They're caring. I could go on and on. One thing that I enjoy telling people, because people never realize this, so going back to wild wolves, biologists can do counts of wild wolves and pup counts by going into a wild wolf's den. They can go in and they can count puppies. With the Mexican and the Red Wolf program, we do something called Fostering to Wild, where can do a whole episode on that alone. Yeah. But essentially, what it is if a litter. Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah. It's a tool in our conservation toolbox, so to speak. If a litter is born in captivity, we are under human care. We will act, and it lines up with a litter in the wild. We will actually take puppies from here and put them in a wild den so that they're raised as a wild wolf. And you do this before their eyes open, so before 14 days old. We've now done it several times. We have wolves in the wild from here that were put there in that manner. So here, again, these wolves are under human care, but we try to keep them as wild as possible. We can go in there and we have to check these puppies. We do pup checks. They have to get their vaccines. When they're neonates, we take them and put them in the wild. The parents do not protect them.
So are they safe with the lack of protection if they're put out there?
So what we do is when we take, say we had a litter born this spring, we took a couple of puppies, we flew them out to New Mexico, and they were put in a wild den with a wild mother with other offspring that are already there. So when they do that, they rub them together, they have them urinate and defecate on each other so they smell the same. They all get microchips, so if they're caught as an adult, they'll know who they are. The mother is gone. She leaves the den. She will come back. She always comes back. And she raises them. And so the puppies that we've put out there, they don't know. Their eyes aren't open yet. They have no idea what's going on. So they're raised as a wild wolf. Yes. Yes. But to your question, I don't know any animal, whether it's a bear, a big cat, or a human, that doesn't protect their young. And it's not that they don't want to protect their young. They are that afraid of us. So, you have Little Red Riding Hood. You have all these silly stories that have given wolves this reputation they don't deserve. So I love telling people that, because people are often like, really? I can go in there right now. I mean, the puppies now are grown by myself and not that I would do this, and take a puppy. They would not come after me. They're that afraid. They're that afraid.
And that's the sad part. It's like, I'm wondering if there's anything that we could do to train them to be more afraid, or
the wolves or people?
The wolves, basically, if the wolves, because they're so afraid of humans, do you feel like it's causing the humans to be able to kind of get over more and encroach on their territory more, or?
Yeah, that's actually a good and interesting way to put it. I feel that the more afraid they are, the less likely they're to have encounters with people.
Okay, good.
The less likely they're going to come on your porch, or, bears, they will come and eat your garbage and that kind of thing.
If that was to make them vulnerable or not.
No, I think the more afraid they are, the better, more successful they're going to be.
Okay, good.
The less people, and if you go to where there are wild wolves, Yellowstone is the best place to see them. I've been there several times. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I really want to go. That's on my bucket list.
Go. Yeah. It is amazing. And you'll find the wolf watchers. I mean, it's a big part of tourism there. You'll find them with their scopes, because the wolves are far away. Yeah. But people go there just to see wolves. And it's a reliable place to see them. Because they're in other places, but it's almost impossible to see a wolf in the wild. They know you're there before you know the wolf is there, and they're gone. So, which is what they should do.
Yeah.
So
I watched so many trail cams of Yellowstone trail cams.
Yeah.
They just set it up, and the wolves are in there. So hopefully I can get to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to walk and talk at all?
Yeah.
Or no? Okay. Just walk a little bit slower than you normally would.
Also, if you think there's a good shot, we
to get was like the woods behind them.
I think it's down there.
Down there's better.
Yeah, but I'll have like a little walking transition to there.
Okay.
Yeah, if that makes sense. So go ahead. Or you could just like talk and then we can cut and go down there and continue. Or do you want to just walk?
We could just,
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to pull up the next section. So, as somebody who spends so much, a large portion of my time helping the wolves and feeding the wolves and just being there for them as a guidance and as a support. What have you noticed about the way wolves, I guess, communicate, like their love languages or their communication styles, how they express grief, sadness? What's just like day to day what you've witnessed about them?
Wolves are excellent communicators. I mean, I've worked with animals my whole life. I've dedicated my life to animals, not just wolves, but different kinds of animals. And the one big difference between animals and people, animals communicate. And what they say, they mean, and they say it right away, and you take it for what it is.
It's that I love because it's no subtext, it's no shadiness, it's
none of what humans do exists in
hidden
animals.
messages.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
They're honest.
That's what I love.
And so I find it very easy. They're easier to work with than people are, quite honestly, because they communicate very clearly and beautifully. So they're great. You know when they're sad. You know when they're upset. I mean, body language is a big part of communication, especially for wolves. Their tail posture says a lot. Whether it's up in the air, it means they're confident, they're positive, they're looking at something. Middle of the way is could be relaxed, it can be interpreted different ways. Down or tucked especially is a very subordinate position, scared, potentially unsure. So tail alone can tell you a lot. Ear position can tell you a lot, from flat to forward.
Is that that means danger, right?
Well, it varies, because if you watch the way Canary interacts with Silas, she's a puppy, and so they'll also interact and her ears will go flat. Yeah. So it's also submissive. It can be playful, submissive, because she's the youngster, so she has that role right now. Yeah. So ears, obviously, they howl, which is what they're most well known for. And that's their form of communication with one another, to tell rival packs where they are. It's a good way to tell where their territory is. Tell other wolf packs that they're there. If they're about to go on a hunt, to bring their other pack members together. And I'm sure so many things that we'll never know. So yeah, animal communication is fascinating. And if you just listen and watch, they tell you.
And I love it because it's so direct, and it's so there's no hidden meaning, no hidden messages. It's just direct.
It's true. Yeah, it's honest and true, and very few people have that.
Yeah, literally. So you said that you worked with other animals before, right?
Yeah. So I wanted to go to vet school. That was always my goal in life until I came here about 25 years ago. So I got completely derailed by wolves. But I'm a vet tech by training, so I worked with many, dogs and cats in the veterinary setting. I have a horse and a donkey and a pig. Yes, I'm obsessed with all kinds of animals. I'm on the board of a pig sanctuary because my pig has changed my life.
Wait, is this a pig? So I follow a bunch of different sanctuaries. Is it Arthur's Acres?
I'm on the board of it.
I'm just as an Arthur's Acres. Yeah, I love sanctuaries, so this is what I do. Like, I just go around to different sanctuaries.
We should talk offline about Arthur's Acres.
I'm like, I love Arthur's Acres.
I am obsessed with them.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, because of my pig. So my significant other has a business where he rescues exotic animals and then teaches with them. So at our home, there's a separate building for these animals, but we have 2 owls, we have snakes, lizards, tortoises, an African crested porcupine, and the pig, we adopted him, but he's also our son. He's an educational ambassador. He travels to schools and does the education thing, but he lives in the house. And
is he a mini?
He's a Kuni Kun, so he's a smaller breed of pig. He's about 200 pounds, but he sleeps on the dog bed with my shepherd. And he's changed my life in more ways than I could ever imagine. And he drove me to Arthur's Acres, and now I am head over heels for that organization and what they do.
I love Arthur's Acres. Like, they're They're just amazing. So is the Wolf Conservation
That's
Center.
really funny. That's great. I love when things come together, like loves come together.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
There's also like a seal conservation center in Ireland. I'll send it to you after.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Yeah,
It's a long
yeah.
list.
So I love all animals. I always have. It's
Same.
why I'm on this planet is to work for animals. That's always been my mission since probably out of the womb. So I'm very lucky that I live in the next town over, and this place was down the road from me. I never in my wildest dreams thought that a place like this would be in my backyard. So I'm so blessed with what I do. I love what I don't work. This is
It's
my
like a
life.
calling.
Exactly.
Literally, it's a
Yeah.
calling. And I feel like I can definitely.
So what would you say is the difference between conservation and protection?
It's a great question. I think care fuels conservation, and I think conservation also directly influences how you care for certain animals. But I think conservation can also speak much more broadly to long-term species recovery and protections and maintaining thriving wild populations. And I think depending on how you look at care, it can also be very narrow-minded. But again, as one of the many factors that go into conservation. So, we talk about, one of the parts of our mission is recovery. And so actively working to recover red wolves and Mexican gray wolves to their ancestral homes in the wild. But in order to do that, we have to take care of those wolves. And so our animal care team really maintains very high standards for the wolves on site and provides very intensive care to make sure that they're eligible for release so we can in turn save that species.
Right. And I guess on top of that, right now, this kind of echoes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is we are just so riddled in a world that is primarily, of course, it's human ran. So everything is seen from a human perspective or like a human zeitgeist. But what is your opinion on the ways that we can maybe recenter so that it's less, heavily specious and recentered from an animal perspective and like new ways of life, new ways of thinking?
Yeah, so I think it's very important to remember that we, and I know it depends on who you talk to, we are not above wildlife or above animals, we're all equal. But we've actually been given a really important role in that we can make decisions for other non-human beings. And so I think we really need to prioritize, unfortunately, yeah, exactly. And so I think we really need to prioritize the long-term health, welfare, emotional well-being of other species. And we've seen some slow progress, and whether it's in primarily in other countries, but there's other countries where you'll see animals being talked about being given rights under the law, or like rights to nature, rivers having rights. And so we see that there's this movement, and I think it will happen. We just need more people to be aware that it's an option and that it's something we can push for. But we've also seen changes even in how people speak about wildlife, and I think that's really important because it shows that change is happening. And so, when you're talking, and we do this here, when we talk about wolves, we don't use it. We use he or she, and we give them that kind of exactly because they do have personalities, and they are beings. And there's even out in Wisconsin, there's the Ojibwe people, and they don't call it a management plan when it comes to wolves. They call it a relationship plan. And I think that's very important as well, because when we do talk about managing wildlife, it inherently implies that we're managing top down. Exactly. And it should just be more of an active relationship.
Yeah, like, what is it,
Exactly. There shouldn't be a hierarchy.
Yeah, no hierarchy. And I definitely agree with that, and I feel like visibility also is really important, like reframing language and like the jargon that we use.
Exactly. Words we use matter.
Yeah, words, it really does. And also visibility as well, which I feel like you guys have hit it on the head in every aspect of that. But that goes on to my next question, which is what hope do you see for the future of animal rights? You kind of touched on it, but what are your hopes for the future of animal rights?
I would love to see a world where all trophy hunting is banned. All sport hunting is banned, because we're recognizing that there's no ethical reason to kill these animals. There should be no wolf hunting. There should be no grizzly bear hunting or bear hunting. And right now, we are constantly playing defense. So it's usually people saying, no, we are able to hunt them. And so it's kind of reframing centuries of this viewpoint of, you should be able to kill wolves.
Right.
And so I think it would be a lot of effort, and it would not be an immediate decision, but I do think we could get to a point where we can help people connect so deeply to wildlife that we could hit a point in this country where we have banned trophy hunting.
I hope so, and I want to put that out there to the viewers watching. If you're reading this, think about ways you can contact your representatives. Think about ways you can contact your local policy leaders, and just like really get involved beyond. Social media is great, but getting involved beyond that would be another great way. And I don't know if there's other tools that you recommend.
So we do, if people are interested in like wolf specific actions, we do have on our website an advocacy page. So we have
resources.
Exactly. So resources, we have a variety of alerts that you can fill out, and we actually connect you directly with your representative. And we give you talking points because it can be intimidating. And so we want to make it as easy as possible, and this is something you can do from your phone. And it really takes about 2 minutes. And it lets people who have to report to you, basically, because these are your elected officials, it lets them know what matters to you. And so they'll actually calculate how many people reached out about this issue. And if enough people reach out about a certain issue, that could become a platform talking point for them. That could become a priority because they know it matters to their constituents. And if people aren't saying anything, then they could justify it by saying, well, my constituents don't care. It's not a priority.
Pressure is the only thing that gets...
Exactly. Let people know you're paying attention and that you're watching. Exactly.
It's the only way.
Made it. It's done. You read too fast. So these guys are in their summer coats right now. So if you were to come back in December, they would probably look double the size because they grow their undercoat, which is what protects them and keeps them warm in the winter. So yeah, so now they appear kind of, I mean, he's big, but their coats are very different now than what they'll be in a few months.
So he's gonna get even bigger.
He'll appear to be bigger.
Wow.
Weight will be the same, but they have two coats. They have an undercoat and an exterior coat, which is what you see. The top coat acts like a Scotch guard that it keeps them waterproof. So when it snows, they're so well insulated that the snow doesn't melt on their backs.
Nice.
Which is very cool. And then the undercoat is what keeps them warm, and that's what they shed out in the spring. So much like Huskies and German Shepherds wear their coat, they similarly do the same thing.
Nice. Should I just do a shot like looking at, or?
Yeah.
I think we have another question. Oh, they're just asking for the
Sorry. He's bucket. Hi, buddy.
Done. No more. Always hopeful. Should we head to the car?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just sharing.
No, that's okay.
The live stream.
Especially when they're done with it.
Okay, guys, so I'm going to do the history and So what would you say it takes financially and emotionally to be able to run a center like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Our founder is amazing. She bought this property with the intention of creating what we are doing now. She put us obviously in a very affluent area, being in northern Westchester, being an hour north of New York City. It's a phenomenal location as far as
prime location.
It's prime. I mean, we're in the middle of the country, but New York City is an hour
away.
away.
Is right there.
So
you have everything.
Yes, we have everything, and it's very expensive to live here.
Yeah, that's all like finances.
Yeah,
it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. I mean, land is expensive, and everything's expensive.
But
period.
you guys are doing good. Like,
we are. We're very lucky. We have a wonderful board. We have a fabulous CEO. We have a team of volunteers that are exceptional. I mean, when I started 25 years ago, I was one of the first staff hired. It was just our
so
founder.
you and Reagan started around the same time.
So the center was founded in 1999, and I showed up as a volunteer in 2000. And at the time, I wanted to go to vet school, and so I thought this would be great to get some different experience, and I just fell in love immediately. And I was here every day, doing what I could, and it just evolved into something that I never knew would. And so fast forward now, there was no staff at that time. It was just volunteers. This was the only enclosure with our original group of ambassador wolves. And then over time, we've bought the properties around us. We've joined the Mexican and Red Wolf program. We've built all the other enclosures. Our staff has grown tenfold. I went from, 2 people to now, what are we, 18, 19 people? It's grown
brick by brick.
Exactly. Literally brick by brick. 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah. So, we've come a very long way. So our founder had the great foresight to put us in a really great location, because education is one of our pillars, of course. And so for people to be able to visit us, Metro North is not far from here. So we're still, I think, the best kept secret, because not everybody knows about us.
But it's getting out soon. I can see you guys popping up like all over TikTok.
Yeah, and thanks to social media. I mean, when I started, there was no social media. I'm dating myself now, but at that in 2000, I guess, because it was 19. I just started in 2000. There was no social media. Yeah. So social media has been such a great tool for organizations like this across the board, because it's a way to get your message out. It's a way to fundraise.
Because I will say, you guys have a lot of Gen Z support, like all over TikTok.
I'm not on TikTok, but that's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gen Z support.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good.
I guess my next question is just more about, when you're taking care of animals, and sometimes, unfortunately, if animals suffer injuries or if they're coming from backgrounds that are a bit more detrimental and you're trying to save them, have you ever encountered any instances where maybe you've lost any wolves, whether to health or, whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
Yeah, it's of course, it's difficult. And like going back to our two different populations here, our recovery animals are the red and Mexican wolves that we work with. Because our husbandry is so I'm happy to say no one here comes from a bad situation.
Okay.
So they're not rescued, unlike a farm animal sanctuary where they were tested on or fell off of a transport truck or something like that. The wolves, our red and Mexican wolves, were born in the system because they are endangered to help support the wild population. So thankfully they all, they come from different zoos and stuff like that.
Okay, so
they all have good starts.
Good health.
Yes.
Okay.
And our ambassador wolves, same thing. They were created with the intention of being exactly what they are, education animals.
Right.
So that at least is a positive.
Teacher.
Yes.
Of the sanctuary.
Yeah. But they're living beings and they have health problems just like all of us do. So of course aging gets complicated. Our wild wolves, because we're so hands-off, we're limited in what we can provide. Because, like I said, they don't come to the fence for a meatball. I can't give them a daily anything because we keep them in a manner that they have no interest in doing that. They're wild, as they should be. So our goal is obviously put them all back in the wild at some point, if possible. But those that have to remain in captivity, like I said, the captive population supports the wild. So their presence in this system is super important, because without them there would be no wild population. So we deal with cancers, we deal with old age. Sometimes, thankfully it's few and far between. They are wild animals, and wolves compared to dogs, they're kind of the super canine. They're put together properly. We've bred so many dogs to have so many problems, like the brachiocephalic, the dogs with the pushed-in noses that can't breathe.
Oh, yeah, like the pugs.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've created some breeds that you wonder.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but so some breeds are susceptible to heart conditions or certain cancers or bloat or what have you. Thankfully, wolves, they usually do great until not, and when they don't, they're wild.
Yeah.
So even our
natural flow of nature.
Exactly. So even the education wolves. No, it's okay. Even the education wolves, they're still wild. They're still wolves. Mm-hmm. And so thankfully, they're great until they're not. And then if they're not, we do our best to support them. But when we lose them, it's a big deal. Especially our education animals, because they're going to live out their lives here. They're with us from puppyhood, and they will be here until they die. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that could be 13, 14, 15, 16 years. They have a wonderful life here, and they have the best veterinary care they could have. But things happen. They have a pond, they have dens, this is a 2-acre enclosure, so they have plenty of space.
So it's just their natural progression, as opposed to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I guess to end on a positive
yes.
note, I was going to say, are there any questions? I had a lot of questions for you, but I know you don't have much time. So to end on a positive note, I was just going to say, is there anything that we didn't get to talk about that you really, want to share with the audience? Anything that you feel like should be out there, should be talked about?
Sure. I think it's really important, because I know things can get so overwhelming, and it can be very intimidating, and it can seem like things aren't changing fast enough for us. But using our voices really matters, and we can really create change. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important that people remember that we need to speak up. And, to give an example, there was a case in Wyoming last year. It made national and international headlines, but a man ran down a young female wolf in a snowmobile, ran her over, brought her home, duct taped her mouth shut, brought her to a bar, had people pose for pictures with her, and then brought her out behind the bar and shot her. And in the state of Wyoming, the only thing that was illegal about what he did was bringing a live animal home. And so he was fined $250. But
With no jail time.
No, but there was enough public outcry that the state of Wyoming had to convene a working group to talk about it. And then just recently, he was indicted by a grand jury. And so
Thank God.
But that was because the story blew up and
Yeah.
people were outraged. If people didn't create a big stink about it, it would have just been the $250 fine. And now people are realizing what is happening in Wyoming, what's happening in these states, because it happens in Idaho too. So why are we letting states
Go under
behave
the radar.
like this towards animals? It was animal cruelty.
So it was animal cruelty, and I also feel like it's a sign of like serial killer tendencies. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you would do that,
it's cruel. It's
cruel,
concerning. It's concerning behavior.
And it says so much about like mental.
Yeah, it's concerning,
yeah,
and
it's
so
very
it's
concerning.
if it's good that some good came of it,
Yeah,
that we were
definitely.
able to create some change.
And I think that goes into like media as a movement. Like
Yeah.
media is really one of the most powerful tools that we have, and if we can do that, like that example
Yeah.
that you just gave, but on like a mass scale across
Yeah.
states, and kind of everybody being their own investigative reporters.
Yeah.
Of like, hey, let's put this out.
Yeah.
Let's tell this
Yeah.
story because it needs to be
Yeah.
out there. So
I agree. We have to hold
Yeah.
people accountable.
Yeah,
I
we
just
have-
think using your voice matters,
Yes.
and I think people should feel empowered to do so.
So I definitely feel empowered being here. It's just been great and honestly really inspirational. So I just want to thank you.
Of course,
for
thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you.
On this crisp autumn day, I left the grounds of WCC carrying something much more than footage and notebooks. I carried a reminder: magic is not just in fictional castles or wizard swans. The true magic lives in wild places, in the howl that splits the night, in the leaf litter underfoot, and the promise that one species might return. And the wolves, they're still waiting. We just have to listen.